on the record with State versus Michael Marshallak on indictment 1434-12-2021. Is here for motion. Finish the record, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Assistant Prosecutor Dennis Murray on behalf of the state.
Mr. Kim, on behalf of Mr. Michael Marshallak, who is present in court at the end of this table.
Hi, Mr. Marshallak. Counsel?
Sarah Seelig Walsh, Judge. I'm also appearing on behalf of Mr. Marshallak.
All right, everybody may have a seat. All right, we're here today on the hearing of this court order on the motion to suppress evidence.
Yes, Your Honor.
Counsel, do you have what your witnesses?
I do, Your Honor, and just as a preliminary matter, I have a phone call which was burned onto a CD for Your Honor. I intended to offer it as an exhibit and play it during the hearing in this case. It was my understanding coming into the hearing that there was a stipulation as to its authenticity, so I would just be able to play it. I spoke to counsel off the record, and it seems like that may not be the case. There may have been a misunderstanding. So I just want to make it clear that I do intend to play that phone call, whether it's today or whether I'm required to call an additional witness who is not available today to authenticate it.
So, Your Honor, just to provide some color on this, I had subpoenaed operator John Lyons, who is the person who took the phone call and subsequently made another radio call, and it's the radio call that I had originally attached as an exhibit to the brief in this motion. I subpoenaed Mr. Lyons. Mr. Lyons had a conflict, and I told him that if the state would be willing to stipulate to the radio that I made as an exhibit, then he would be off the hook. So that's why I had a conversation with Mr. Murray, and I think the misunderstanding was which audio we're talking about, because I was talking with the radio. He's clearly talking about a different audio clip, and so at that point there is some stipulation, and I did have Mr. Lyons at the subpoena, but he has been released from it because of the understanding that I had.
So I don't understand. What's the position with respect to this audio?
Judge, I'll stipulate to their radio call if they want to stipulate to my phone call. That's fine. It'll save us the necessity of calling a witness merely to authenticate two pieces of evidence. We would literally be calling the operator to just authenticate a radio call and a phone call.
Judge, I'm fine with that. It's just I do not want to come back for another time just to have the operator authenticate both pieces of audio.
So we have a stipulation or we do not?
We do. My understanding was that Mr. Murray was only stipulating to that, but if he's willing to stipulate to both, I'm fine with it.
I'm willing to stipulate.
For the purposes of this hearing, you'll stipulate to both, yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. We can proceed.
Your Honor, at this time the state calls Melissa Gigante.
Melissa Gigante to the stand, please.
They're
She
all
outside?
in the fishbowl.
Justice Administration.
Yes.
I would like to request a superstation order for all of the witnesses.
I previously instructed all of my witnesses to not speak about this case amongst themselves whatsoever, Your Honor.
Okay.
Do you have anything in the CD drive?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to put the CD in the CD drive just so it's queued up and ready to go.
Please come take the stand. Remain standing and the court officer will swear you in. This is the stand right here.
Hard to get to these days.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and your affiliation for the record.
Melissa Gigante.
Please have a seat. Ms. Gigante, I'll need you to speak up, and I'll need that microphone only is for the court recording. it doesn't project sound, so I'll need you to speak up so that everybody can hear you, okay?
No problem.
Thank you. Your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Where do you work?
Hoboken Police Department.
And how long have you worked for the Hoboken Police Department?
I'm in my 26th year.
What rank do you currently hold? with the
Lieutenant.
Hoboken Police Department? And what responsibilities do you have as a lieutenant with the Hoboken Police Department?
I am the commander of the school safety unit.
What responsibilities does it entail as commander of the school safety unit?
So I am in charge of making sure that the students are safe when they go into school. I coordinate with the schools to make sure that all of their safety drills and everything are on task, as well as being in charge of my officers to make sure that everyone is doing their job throughout the schools.
How many officers work for you in this position?
I currently have 3 officers that are under me at this time.
And how long have you been in this school safety position in Hoboken?
So I've been in there since 2011, and prior to that, 2002, for about 4 or 5 years. There was a little gap.
And just briefly, before you held the school safety position, what other positions have you held in the Hoboken Police Department?
So I've been in the Detective Bureau, I was in community policing, I worked every shift in uniform, so days 4 to 12, midnights. That's pretty much it.
I'm going to draw your attention to October 15th of 2020. Do you remember that date?
Yes.
Were you working on that date?
Yes, I was.
And what were your responsibilities when you were working on that date?
So I was assigned to the high school, and my normal duty is just making sure that we have officers assigned to the school. Because we were in the pandemic, we were really focusing on the new policies and protocols throughout the schools to make sure that everyone was adhering to those rules.
So you mentioned the pandemic and you mentioned policies and protocols. What policies and protocols are you talking about specifically?
Well, there was the mask protocol that was in place, as well as the social distancing and not allowing anyone to enter the school buildings.
So I'm going to draw your attention to approximately 8:10 a.m. Do you remember that morning?
Yes.
And do you remember what, if any, incident happened at approximately 8:10 a.m.?
My sergeant that is under me called me and said that there was a parent that was at the school refusing to allow their child to enter the building without a mask.
What was your response after receiving that phone call?
So I gathered more information, and then I told them that I would respond over to have the conversation directly.
So you said you responded over. Where did you go specifically?
To Brant Elementary School, which is like 3 blocks away from the high school that I'm stationed at.
When you arrived at Brant Elementary School, what did you do next?
I observed Sergeant LeBruno speaking to a parent who had their child with them. So Sergeant LeBruno came over and explained to me what was going on. He explained that the parent did not want to allow his child to go into the school without his mask on. So then I went over and spoke with the parent.
Do you know who the parent you spoke to was?
Yes,
And who is that person?
Michael Marshallek.
Do you see Michael Marshallek in the courtroom today?
Yes, he's right
And
here.
can you just point him out for the record? Or indicate a piece of clothing that he's wearing, perhaps, for the record.
He's wearing a black blazer. Unless it's navy blue. Okay, navy blue.
Is that sufficient for your honor? Can you describe him more so we are talking about the same person?
As I'm looking at him?
It's for the record.
Okay, sure, no problem. So Michael grew out his hair and his beard, I see, and he's wearing glasses with a striped shirt and a navy blue tie.
Is that sufficient for the record, your honor?
You could just say he's sitting in council saying, because that looks gray to me. Pink shirt, maybe?
I don't know, I was going with red and white, but I'm not sure, because it may be you might be right with the pink.
I know the witness is pointing to counsel table, she can say counsel table.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure the record was clear.
Okay.
Your Honor. So when you made contact with Mr. Marshallek, what happened next?
I introduced myself and I told him who I was and the reason why I was there, and I asked him to explain what exactly was going on.
And so we're clear, what was the reason while you were there?
Well, because Sergeant LeBruno was having the issue and he was not able at that time to resolve it, he had called me as his boss to then come there and have a further conversation about what was happening.
After you introduced yourself to Mr. Marshallek, what happened next?
Well, Mr. Marshallek, from the beginning, continued to record me and ask me, explain to me the reason why he wanted his child to go into the building and how he didn't understand that, why his son had to wear the mask, and continued to state about, freedom of, taking away his freedoms, things of that nature.
While you were speaking to him, did you offer him any options to resolve the situation?
I did.
And what were those options?
I told him that it was very important for Noah to get into the building so that he can continue his education. I said he can either go inside, they will provide him with a mask.
And I'm sorry, when you use the pronoun he can go inside, can we just be...
Noah, yes, I'm sorry, his child Noah.
Okay.
Is it okay if I refer to him as Noah with his name? Is that okay?
It is, I mean, it's already on the record, but for the purposes of, just for the purposes,
Okay.
we already used his name for the record.
So I explained that Noah could go inside, they would provide him with a mask so that he can continue his day in person to get his education, or if he was not willing to do so, that he could bring Noah back home to his mom so that he could then do virtual on the Chromebook so that he could get his education that way, because that was important to me, that the child wanted to go to school and, we were standing outside having this conversation.
Did Mr. Marshallek make any statements to you about his expertise in this specific area?
Well, he did tell me that he had a doctor's note. I asked him if he could provide me with that and who the doctor was, and he said that he was Noah's doctor, but that he did not have the papers on him at the time.
How did this situation ultimately resolve?
Mr. Marshallek agreed to take his child back home to the wife or to Noah's mom and would consider him continuing the day virtually on the computer and not in the building.
So after your conversation with Mr. Marshallek ended, what was your next step in the process?
So based on Mr. Marshallek's behavior at the time, which I felt to be erratic, and I was concerned for the child, because to me, in my head, I felt like it was neglectful to not allow the child to come into school, although I know we are all allowed to have our own opinions. I was concerned that he said that he was his son's doctor, didn't have any proof of that. I was concerned based on the comments that he was making about the mask policy and things of that nature, and I wasn't confident enough that he was going home to have his child get on the computer. So I had Sergeant LeBruno call Mobile Crisis to do a check-in on Mr. Marshallek to make sure that he was okay, for the purpose of making sure that Noah was okay.
And I just want to take a step back. In your previous answer, you mentioned the word erratic specifically. What observations did you make that led you to the conclusion of erratic?
He was, Mr. Marshallek,
Thank you.
thank you. When he was speaking to me, he was repeating himself. I was continuing to give clear direction on what could be done, and he was just expressing how this wasn't okay, how things, that his child should not be subjected to this. It was very difficult for me to bring him back, the focus back to what was actually happening and what the importance was on hand.
were there any other concerning behaviors that you observed on that date?
I mean, I found it a little strange that he was narrating me while he was recording me. I'm used to people recording me, but he was almost narrating exactly what was happening as I was doing it. It just didn't seem like, for lack of a better word, normal behavior at that point. I do remember he was wearing flip-flops. I don't know what the weather was like, but it's not abnormal. That sticks out in my head. But I do know that he was sweating, but again, that could be normal. So other than that, I don't know.
So before I took you back, you mentioned that you had Sergeant LeBruno call mobile crisis. Is that correct?
Yes.
What is mobile crisis?
So basically what the mobile crisis unit, what they do is they go into, they respond to houses to do an assessment to make sure that people's mental health, or they're in a good state of mind, and they do an evaluation to see if there's anything further as far as resources to get them involved in if necessary.
Who makes up or who comprises the mobile crisis unit? Is that the proper terminology?
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I don't know. I know that they work out of Jersey City Medical Center, and it's one of the resources that I have used on several occasions.
Let me ask it this way. Are they employees of the Hoboken Police Department?
They are not.
So I'd like to draw your attention to 10:30 a.m. of that same day, October 15th, 2020. What happened at 10:30?
Mobile crisis responded to go to the house.
Where were you?
I think I was back at the high school.
Was there a point in time when you also responded to the residents with the mobile crisis unit?
Yes, it's typical that mobile crisis, when they're responding to a job, they will call the police department to be on hand with them when they are going to do an assessment.
So what happened when you arrived at the residence?
So when we arrived there, mobile crisis said that they attempted to knock on the door. They didn't have any success, but that they did see someone like peek out of the shade in the front. There's two small windows because it's a basement. So there's two windows side by side. So they said they saw movement over there, but they couldn't get in.
What did you do?
So I again was with Sergeant LeBruno. We attempted to knock on the door again. We were not getting an answer. In speaking with mobile units, they were eager, again, for lack of a better word, to get in to have a conversation. So I had called emergency service units, our Hoboken police officers, to come and stand by in case there was a reason to breach the door to get in. At this point, again, knowing that Noah was home or believed to be home, we just wanted to make sure that everything was okay.
And what happened after, did you say you entered the foyer door? Is that correct?
So we did, at some point we were, so there's two doors. I'm not really good at this, but there's the basement windows, there's a door here, and then you go into like a foyer-way probably from here to there. This door was unlocked and opened. The second door, when we knocked, we didn't get anything. When we made a second attempt, we knocked on the door, Sergeant LeBruno knocked on the door, and the door actually did open up. But we didn't go in. We went back outside to have the conversation with the emergency service units to say we may have to go in, but we weren't going to go in just as two people. When we went back in with ESU, the door was then closed and locked.
And that would be the second door was closed?
Correct, the
and locked.
second door, not
Is
the...
that correct?
Yep, not the, I guess you would say the outermost door was unlocked and opened, and then that would be the door that leads directly into the apartment.
So on October 15th, 2020, did you ever have an occasion to make contact with Mr. Marshall at his residence?
No. And I did attempt via email to say, hey, I'm here. I didn't get a response, and the numbers that we had on file with Genesis, which is what the school system uses, those numbers were coming back to, nobody was answering. They may have been like Google numbers.
Did the Hoboken Police Department or any other law enforcement authority make a forced entry on October 15th, 2020?
No. Mobile Crisis did tell us that at one point, they needed eyes on Mr. Marshallek because he was in, the hospital, I believe in August, and was supposed to go for a follow-up, and he never went back. So they had some urgency saying, now we need to see and confirm that he's okay. But then at some point, they said to me, let us know if you get in, we'll come back. And that didn't sit well with me because I felt that that was a violation to go in at that point. I didn't feel the urgency. I was being, at that point, I was taking the, a step back, and they were in charge saying, hey, we need to see him, so we were being of assistance. But once they were saying they were leaving the scene, I said, well, we're not going to enter if you guys are not here. So we kind of hit the pause button and didn't do anything that day.
And that was all on October 15th,
That was October
2020,
15th.
is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to turn your attention to October 16th of 2020, the next day. Were you working on that day?
I was.
And in what capacity were you working on that day?
The same. I was at the high school running the schools.
Do you recall being involved in something, again, relevant to the investigation we're here for today?
Yes. So I know that one of the other calls that were made was to DCPP on the 15th because of the neglect of the education, or what we felt should have been something that, Noah should have been in school that day. So we had contacted them. DCPP responded, and Sergeant Figueroa, who was also under me at that time, he was Officer Figueroa at that time, went to the apartment to again make contact and with DCPP.
And when now Sergeant Figueroa, went to the apartment with DCP&P, that was on October 16th, 2020?
Yes.
Just making sure we're talking about the same day. Do you know if Officer Figueroa or DCP&P were able to get in contact with anybody in the family on that date?
They were not.
So what happened after DCP&P and Officer Figueroa attempted to make contact with the family?
So Officer Figueroa contacted me and said that they were met with negative results. No one was home. And shortly after, I want to say maybe an hour or two later, we had, headquarters had received a call from a concerned citizen, or neighbor rather, saying that they have not seen Mr. Marshallek's wife or the family, which apparently was something that was common because they were in the same area.
So who is the supervisor? Who's the one that's calling the shots at this point in the investigation?
That is me, as I am coordinating with my captain because everything has to go up the chain. But I'm just keeping him in the loop. But ultimately, I'm the one that's calling the shots.
So what did you, as the supervisor in this investigation, do after you received a phone call from this concerned citizen?
So based on the information that Sergeant LeBruno received from the neighbor, I contacted the captain and said Noah was not in school today. That was another flag. So the 15th happens, he goes home from school. The 16th, he does not show up for school, and no one even calls to say that the child would not be in school. And I believe at that time he was 5. So after the phone call, after Sergeant LeBruno gets the phone call and receives all the information, I talk to the captain and say, what she's saying on the phone and what happened yesterday, I think that we need to now really make sure everybody's okay, because I'm thinking maybe something happened to the wife, maybe something happened to him, maybe something happened to Noah, but it doesn't sit well with me.
So I just want to take you a step back again.
Mhm.
You said on the 15th, after the family, or Mr. Marshall and the child went home, and then on the 16th, the child wasn't in school on either of those days. Is that correct?
Correct.
How do you know that?
Because of my relationship with the school, I am allowed to get that information. So I knew that the 15th he wasn't there because Mr. Marshall had clearly told me he was taking Noah home that day. And then on the 16th, when Officer Figueroa is assigned to that school, he checked with the principal, and the principal confirmed that he was not in school on that day.
And how did you also know that he wasn't called out absent those days?
Because we checked with the staff. The principal checked with his receptionist, and no one had called that day.
So at this point, after you had received the phone call, after you had spoken to your captain, what was the next step that you took in this investigation?
So the captain had given the approval to go by the house again and attempt to make contact, hoping to just make contact by knocking on the door, but also giving approval for a forced entry if necessary based on the information that was received. So one of my other sergeants at the time was a former ESU, Emergency Service Unit guy, which means that they're the ones that go in like SWAT, for lack of a better word, right? So I called him down to my office at the high school with my school safety unit, and we had a conversation about what does this look like, what is the safest way that we're going to approach this house.
And when did all of you make the decision to actually physically go to Mr. Marshall's residence?
Probably about 45 minutes after that phone call, maybe an hour.
And how many total officers, along with yourself, went to Mr. Marshall's residence?
So it was myself, Officer Figueroa, Sergeant Oliveira, Sergeant LeBruno, Sergeant Tristy. Initially, there were 5 of us, but then the ESU unit, which I believe were another 3 officers who specialize in the door breaching and everything, were on standby. I believe there were 3 of them.
When you went to Mr. Marshall's residence, what was your role at the scene, we'll call it?
So I was supervisor, but also because I had what I felt was the rapport with Mr. Marshallek, I was also taking the front seat in trying to get communication.
How did you try to get communication?
Knocking on the door, knocking on the window at some point, banging on the door, again trying the phone, again sending the emails, talking very loudly outside of the windows, but to no avail.
So the phone calls that you made, where did you get those phone numbers from?
From Genesis. They were what is on record with the school system, and also we had them from the day prior to, because we had the police report.
And the same question, when you tried to send emails, where did you, how did you know what email to send?
All the information is in the report, as well as, I don't think the email is on the report, but the emails were in the Genesis.
Did you receive any responses to the emails that you sent?
I did not receive one that day. I believe the day before, Mr. Marshallek and I had communication regarding the doctor's note, and he said there was no need for a conversation.
And how about the phone calls that you made? When you made phone calls, did you ever actually speak to Mr. Marshallek?
Not at that point, not at the initial. It wasn't until later on in the day when Hudson County SWAT was actually activated and there were the crisis negotiators that I tried the telephone numbers we had, and I did have a brief conversation with Mr. Marshallek.
We all know at this point in this case that the Hoboken Police made forced entry to the residence. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Who made that decision to make forced entry?
It was myself, along with again, conferring with the captain, Captain Brereton, who had given the go-ahead.
And what were the factors in the situation that led you to speak to the captain to request permission to make forced entry?
So I really think that it was the concerned neighbor's phone call that really tied everything together. She had stated that her nanny actually was friends with Mr. Marshallek's wife. I don't want to say her name incorrectly. I think her name was Fayum, but I don't want to be incorrect, so Mr. Marshallek's wife. They're both from Thailand, and she gave Sergeant LeBruno a little bit of history about how people from Thai, like, really stick together culturally. So she began to say that the nanny explained that the wife had confided in her, saying that Mr. Marshallek and her were having some issues, that he was verbally abusive to her, that he was very controlling, that she was considering or had already filed for a divorce, and also expressed something about him having control over her finances. So with my years of experience, I'm already thinking domestic violence is what's in my head. Not that I can prove it, but that's where my head was at. So again, that phone call and not being able to have contact or anyone seeing Noah or having eyes on anything, even though it was just the day before, was concerning.
And how many times total between October 15th and October 16th of 2022 did you personally go to that residence?
I was only there on the 2 occasions, because the other times happened on the later shift, and I had Officer Figueroa go at my direction with DCPP on his own, so only twice.
I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Kim?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You mentioned that as part of your duty assigned to the school safety unit, you were at the Grant Elementary School.
Well, I work out of the high school, but that morning I did respond over to Brant, correct.
And you said that as part of your duty as the school safety unit, you often work with schools, correct?
Correct.
In October 2020, you're aware that Hoboken schools were offering remote learning, right?
That's correct.
And that's because some parents were not comfortable with sending their kids to school in person at that time?
Correct.
And are you also aware that parents don't have to send their kids to school until they are 6 years old?
So I want to back up to the first part, and if you're enrolled, yes, I'm aware, but if you're enrolled,
Just answer the question.
yes,
You
I'm
are
aware. Mm-hmm.
And you're aware that Noah at the time of October 2020 was only 5 years old?
I am aware.
And you mentioned that you had a conversation with Mr. Marshallek on October 15, 2020,
Correct.
and you went to his home on October 16, 2020?
I went on October 15th and the 16th. Yes.
And when you're handling an incident, it's common police procedure to write a police report, correct?
Correct.
And you wrote a police report as to what occurred on October 15, 2020?
Correct.
And you know that these reports may be used in the future
Yes.
at a hearing like this, perhaps,
Yes.
potentially at trial?
Yes.
So it's important that what you write in the report is the truth.
Of course.
And it's important to include all relevant information.
Yes.
And it's important to write a report because sometimes memory fades.
Absolutely.
So you don't know when you're going to be asked to testify, so a report can help refresh your recollection.
Correct.
You didn't write a report for what happened on October 16, 2020, is that right?
I did not.
But other police officers who were at the scene did write a report about what happened that day, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And those reports included a report by police officer Dennis Figueroa Jr.?
Yes.
And you reviewed this report to make sure that his descriptions of your actions were correct.
Correct.
And as a lieutenant, police officer Dennis Figueroa Jr. was under your command. Detective Vito Gigante also wrote a report about what happened on October 16, 2020.
Correct.
And you reviewed this report as well, just to make sure everything was accurate.
No, I did not.
Detective Vito Gigante is your husband, correct?
Correct.
All right. Before coming to court today, did you speak with anyone about what you might be testifying to?
No.
Did you speak with anyone from the prosecutor's office?
Only with AP Murray to make sure that I had all my reports.
Did you speak with anyone in the police department?
No, I did not.
Did you speak with your husband about what you might be testifying to?
No, I did not.
You mentioned that you spoke with AP Dennis Murray. When did you speak with him?
I believe I came up here yesterday.
And how long was that?
Actually, I'm sorry, I came up here on Tuesday. I apologize.
Understood. And how long was that conversation?
Maybe about 15 minutes or so.
Did you look at any documents in advance of today?
I did.
What kind of documents?
My police reports.
Did you look at any pictures?
I did not look at any pictures.
Did you look at anything else that might pertain to what you might be testifying to today?
I did not.
I want to direct your attention to around 8:10 a.m. on October 15, 2020, which is when you said you had a conversation with Mr. Marshall, correct?
Yes.
And you mentioned that Mr. Marshall was recording your entire conversation.
Correct.
Did you ever watch that video?
Well, it was on YouTube. I didn't go through the whole thing because I think it was like 45 minutes. Someone told me I was YouTube famous, and I have 5 sons, so I really don't have time to sit there and watch it, but, so no, short answer is no.
Okay, but you're aware of the video and you're aware it was made public?
Of course.
Okay. And on that day, Mr. Marshall was requesting that his 5-year-old son attend the Branch Elementary School without a mask.
Correct.
And you told Mr. Marshall that you understood his concerns and that, not everybody likes the mask, correct?
Yes.
But your understanding was that there was a school policy that students needed to wear a mask to enter the school?
Yes.
And because of this policy, you said to Mr. Marshall that his son could wear a mask and enter the school or go home?
Correct.
You also told Mr. Marshall that you would be denying his son access to the school if he didn't have a mask, correct?
That's correct.
And your understanding was that Mr. Marshall's son did not bring a mask that day?
Correct.
So you told Mr. Marshall to go home with his son, correct?
No, I gave him options.
You said either he wear the mask or he go home, correct?
Or he can go home and he can continue on the Chromebook, which is all at the direction of the principal because we do work together. That's an important piece of it.
Okay, but just to focus on the question, you either said he comes into the school or he goes home, correct?
Yes.
And during your conversation with Mr. Marshall, in your report detailing this conversation and this incident, you didn't document that Mr. Marshall's son had any injuries on him?
I didn't see any injuries on him.
And at this time, at around 8 o'clock, you didn't call for help?
I had Sergeant LeBruno with me, so I didn't need any more help.
And in fact, you sent Mr. Marshall and his son home together. You said that they should go home together.
Correct. I couldn't deny him to take his son home.
And during your conversation with Mr. Marshall, he never threatened physical harm to you?
No.
He never yelled?
He was loud at points, but he was frustrated.
He never yelled any threats?
I don't remember.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at the video that Mr. Marshall took of the incident?
Let's go to the video.
We're going to mark this as D1.
Yes, I'm going to mark this as D1 for the purpose of identification.
D1 for identification.
Do you recognize who that is in the video?
Me? That's me, with the mask.
If at any point in the interaction, could you let me know when Mr. Marshall raises his voice for threatening?
I can hardly even, I can't
Can
hear
it be
anything.
louder or no?
If you can get it louder.
Can we make it louder? And I just want to let you guys know, I don't know who ordered a Thai interpreter, but the interpreter is here.
Judge, that was us for Mr. Marshall, ex-wife, who we intend to call as part of.
I might have to call that witness out of turn because of the interpreter, though.
Judge, we were intending to call her as a potential rebuttal witness. We're not,
Okay.
so.
If it's not, then it's okay. If we can't, we can't. But
Could we take a quick minute just to have the technology?
Yeah, Esther, it's still showing on the screen over here.
Okay.
I don't.
The witness has it, for purpose of the record, on
Okay.
her screen.
go ahead. You can play it.
Still can't hear anything.
Went to school because he's not having the math.
He has a disability. Yeah, I did. I sent the email. That's official correspondence to the town, to the superintendent, to the...
Can you show me the email? Who has a policy that was clearly written that says...
Yeah, but that doesn't trump ours. There's an equitable exception, and I'm...
I know, and I'm hearing that, I'm understanding that, but without the proper documentation,
Yeah.
okay, that Mr. Bartlett does not have in his folder for
Yeah.
Noah, we cannot let him in without
He
the
doesn't
mask.
have to be in the folder, it can be verbally.
So, no, it can't.
Yeah, I sent the email. I sent the email.
So, right, so again,
Yeah.
what their policy
We're-
is,
we're-
because I work.
Yeah, policy doesn't trump law. You know, Constitution, you know,
And I'm
is
hearing
law.
you, right,
Yeah.
but in order of.
Where,
if
can you tell me the
everyone
policy,
is
Jim,
doing-
in the state,
So that's
everybody?
in the Board of Education, the Hoboken
Yeah,
Public
I don't,
On the website?
there's nothing on it, I went through it.
It's on
So
there.
you're the one that stated it. The burden of proof is on those making the claim, you know?
Right, understand, it's a different.
You know?
So here's the bottom line,
Yeah.
right? I understand, I'm hearing everything you say, I know that not everybody likes the mask. I'm hearing that you're saying no.
Not that I don't like it, I'm okay with it, I'm a supporter. You wanna wear a mask, I'm
No, I
all
understand,
for
but
it.
like, so like
You know?
even if-
I don't wanna be suppressed, you
Right,
know?
and I understand that, but for Noah, in order for him to enter this building,
Yep,
he needs to have it on, or you need to have the paper in hand saying that he went somewhere and had.
it doesn't say that in
medical
there,
condition.
you know?
So, he needs it on an email or something. So
Yeah, I
no
sent
one
the
has-
email, he
right.
acknowledged it. I
So we
sent
don't,
the
Mr.
email.
Marlett had told me that he doesn't have the email, correct? You
You
don't have the
didn't
email
send an
that says-
email to me, you sent an email to, I believe, the superintendent of schools and the board of education.
Okay, yeah, just so you're aware of that.
But is there an
right?
actual?
You spoke to the superintendent,
What is your first name?
Michael,
Mike, his name?
Marshall.
So you have two options, either if Noah has a mask and he can wear it until he gets the documentation, he's more than welcome to go with his friends upstairs. And if he cannot wear the mask, then you're going to have to go home and let your wife know that he's gonna be on remote learning.
They cannot pick and choose what credentials or anything like that.
Oh, no, but that's not taking,
Yeah,
that's
I know.
a
Yeah,
law, that is
okay.
like official, it
Yeah.
has to be on letterhead, that's just like with us, I mean, I think.
I don't
you
mind
can
going back, I don't mind going back.
If I were-
I'll send it to you,
If I
so we
were-
don't have trouble. I don't want
Right, so, exactly, so.
We're trying to keep it private, and if it doesn't apply, I don't want my information to be shared with the public.
I understand that, and you could certainly email it to me, but in the meantime, no is going
And
to.
I'm pretty sure you got a copy. I could do a records request that you got a copy already.
1,000%.
You got the email already?
No, I didn't get the email yet. I'm
Okay.
saying when you send it to me,
Yeah.
then we can have it, and I will definitely share with Mr. Bartley, and that he has it. What is my?
I don't know what to do.
Okay, so does he have a master?
It doesn't look like
Okay, so he hasn't been coming to school then? No, today's your first day in school?
they didn't enforce, they just enforced it. Like, he wasn't been wearing it.
It's been from the beginning.
Yeah, but they didn't have a condition.
Yeah.
Until I was appalled that someone forced it yesterday. I spoke to him, and I wrote a letter to the school.
So what are we doing today, Michael? Is no one going to go in the building with a mask, or are you taking him home?
Yeah, you're denying him access. I'm not.
I am.
Yeah. You're denying access?
Yes, well, because there is a policy.
And what's going to happen, by the way, if I do
So
walk in the road?
you can't get into this
Okay, I
building,
just
no
thought,
one's gonna let you in,
no,
right?
I'm just wondering,
So you're gonna take no home because you wouldn't want to do anything in front of
are
your
you
son?
going to use violence to pull in the
Absolutely
light?
not.
Are you going to use violence to get me?
No way.
If I walk through that door?
You can't get through the door.
No, not today. The door's not locked.
So if you go into, if you want to know, if you were to go into the building, then you could be charged with trespassing, which I don't think you would want, no, it's.
Now, it wouldn't be trespassing, this is public property, you can't trespass, that's a secondary, it has to be a crime committed.
If there's signs
You know.
that are posted, and if you are not, able to be there, and you're not allowed to be there, then it's trespassing.
I am allowed to,
There are no parents that are allowed in the building right now, unless they have an
Yeah.
appointment.
I'm allowed to drop my child off.
Not, you cannot go into the building, so someone will meet you out here, you
Yeah.
would not be able to enter.
Yeah.
So that's.
So,
the policy, right?
is that, so to make it simple, so that's a secured area, has been reclassified as a secured area?
Sure, let's go with that, yeah.
Okay, not go with that, I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
for the record.
Yeah.
So if that's a secure record, I respect that.
So for the safety.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that's a secure
Right,
record.
so I-
Like, I can't go into offices and all that,
Correct.
like, after,
Or anyone, so
Yeah.
for the safety of the students and the staff,
Yeah.
no one's allowed.
I'm allowed to go in the foyer unless
No,
that's a
not
secure.
even, right now, because of.
Even like town hall, the foyer,
They won't, so they're not allowing people in unless you have a purpose to be there.
okay,
You would
we always have a
to in advance.
purpose, public photography is a purpose.
But you would also need in advance, right? So you would have to, if you wanted to go to town hall, let's
Yeah.
say, these are apples and oranges.
I'm finished with it, thank you, sir.
But we'll have the conversation. If you were to go into town hall and you wanted something to do, you would have to make an appointment and say, this is the reason why I want to come in here because I have X, Y, and Z. They probably wouldn't allow public photography right now.
Yeah.
So, in this school, right, it's a secure area because we cannot let anyone else in there that's not staff or students
Yeah.
for the safety of everyone because of the coronavirus. So whether you choose to, agree or not, I know there's differences on opinion on masks, no
Yeah.
masks, coronavirus, no
Yeah.
coronavirus. It's irrelevant because their policy dictates that no one enters the building without an
Yeah,
appointment.
policy
and
doesn't
without a
come
mask.
from.
Right, yeah, so that's where we are. So again, I asked you, Michael, will no one be attending school in person today, or you can take
Yeah,
your wife for a walk?
he can, I don't like to make this a political,
So he has a mask. You have a
No.
mask, Noah? No, he doesn't have a mask. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
he cannot come into the school.
Okay.
Okay.
You're denying access, obstructing his education.
Absolutely not, because the option is that he can go on remote learning.
He has medical condition, I'm telling you,
I understand.
it's verbally uncool
It's
position.
not, no.
And,
If
if he does that,
you want to find that
he would have,
email,
I'll tell you what's wrong with him,
if you are able to go home and get the email that you sent
Yeah.
and have documentation on a letterhead
Yeah.
with a certified doctor.
So the
then-
email won't count no more,
Well,
or,
the email will count, but if
Okay.
I'm saying, if you wanted to go home
Scan
and
it.
say, hey, here it is, or
Yeah.
email it, and then come back with Noah,
Yeah.
right, and they say this is the reason that he cannot wear a mask,
Yeah.
that's a different story.
Yeah.
Okay, but as of right now, because there is no documentation, he's
Yeah.
not coming to the building. So he has an option of learning remotely for the day until we get this all figured out.
You're very polite, and
Thank you.
of
Thank
course
you.
you are, because you're a lieutenant.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
This is public property right here.
For sure,
Um,
this is public property on
Yeah.
the sidewalk.
I just want to make sure, I'm going to make you aware that I'll be doing public photography here, and I will be protesting. I will use my First Amendment, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly here, and freedom of the press. You know,
Right, so I'm hearing that, Michael, but I do have to tell you one thing, right?
And of course, I wouldn't use obscenities.
Of
You know,
course.
I'm not, no, and I wouldn't be blocking entranceway.
So I could not have you taking pictures of the school while the students are in there?
No, I'm not.
So
I'm not. Yeah, anything seen by eye. No, you can't trespass by eye. You know, whatever.
If you are protesting, which is also your right, you have to be across the street.
This is public photography. This is public ground.
Right?
I'm not. I have no. I'm not gonna. I'll make you aware. No, I have no intention.
No, I don't think you
I'm
do.
not gonna.
I understand. I'm hearing what you're saying.
I'm not gonna be filming kids. You know, I'll avoid that.
I understand that, but I have to let you know that it's alarming to other people sometimes.
It is alarming.
Someone outside,
So
I'm sure that
you took an
will-
oath. You took an oath, and you should be protecting my rights. You know, for freedom of speech. So that trumps over people's fear. It doesn't trump the law.
You're right. You do
So
not trump the
I
law.
actually went out there to educate, to make you your sergeant, everything out there, and your police officers.
Right, so I'm telling you, right,
Yeah.
right, like I understand that protest and do everything, but it would have to be across the street.
Now, is there something in law for that?
So.
Where is that?
When you protest, you cannot be right in front, just like, we talk about voting, right, you're familiar with all this voting and
You
everything?
can't go and voting?
You can vote.
How do you know that your public officials are not really
Right, the public officials.
scamming, you know, corrupted?
Public officials are not able to be right by the polling places, right?
That's public officials.
So same thing,
But-
so when I'm,
Yeah,
getting my point.
yeah, people work for us.
In this building,
Yeah.
you can't have people just loitering outside doing.
I'm not loitering.
Across the street.
Yeah, I'm not loitering.
Anything you want to do across the street to be able to do.
That's a pre-crime. You're trying to put a pre-crime on me. You know, you're already assuming that I'm going to break the law. That's
What I
crime.
would love, Mike,
Yeah.
what I would love is for Noah
I know.
to be able to get his
Yeah.
education today.
Yeah, me too.
So I think that he should go home and log on for local.
You think you don't think it's wrong that you took an oath and you should be standing up? You know, verbal exemption. You know, no, you can't be forced. You know.
Yeah, no, you can't be forced to
You shouldn't be discriminate. You know, you have no right to discriminate, and it's wrong for any person to discriminate.
So there are-
And actually, good servants actually should be standing up against bad service. You know, you guys should be rewarded. You know, and for those who are bad servants should be pointed out. You know, make public aware of what's going on. I think you've been respectful. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
you know,
It's not you. So I appreciate that.
Barley, he seems to be, you know, he has feelings, you know, and he
Well,
does.
he has the school to run,
Yeah,
so he's doing
yeah,
his job,
yeah.
you know?
And I don't want to, I'm not want to interfere, so, that's why I said he could go. Like,
Okay.
So, I just don't like to be, controlled, you know, tell me what to do. We're all equal. So like, I'd still like to know why this, public, you know, there, unless you can state, show me a statute, I'll be happy to respectfully,
Okay. So I can certainly look through that. I don't know if my Wi-Fi is working at all. Have you seen if there's any city ordinance by some chance in the net that we advertise? Or him being on public property? It's really just a safety concern, right? However,
Yeah.
I would love to continue this conversation.
if
You know what my
they
concern
live
is?
here, they should number up too, you know.
I really know what my
Yeah.
concern is right now.
Yeah.
My concern is that they're always standing out
Yeah.
there and he's missing instructional
Yeah.
time because you want to continue to have the conversation about
yeah.
this. So I'm wondering.
I will educate them myself, you know.
Right, I'm more than happy to continue this
Yes.
conversation, but I would really love to know to like log in and do whatever you have to do, maybe your wife. or
They
so?
can't log in, you know, at this point.
Okay. So no, he
Yeah, not
definitely
today.
can.
They made it difficult.
No, he definitely can, because
Yeah.
I have 5 sons, so I know that if they're late, they can still log in, because they're still doing remote.
Yeah.
So like that's
Yeah, we
something
don't,
that's possible.
we might not have, internet or something
So,
like that,
is your wife home that maybe she can go in and you and I can have this conversation? Because I'd be happy to do that.
so.
I mean, I'd be happy
Yeah,
to do
it's gonna take some time.
Okay, so
So we won't be able to attend today's court.
Okay, that's fine, so why don't we bring Noah home to your wife?
Yeah.
And my name's Lieutenant Gigante again, I mean, you can go
Yeah.
back and review the videotape if you need me.
Yeah.
Feel free to call police headquarters and provide me with the number, and we can continue the conversation.
Okay. Is police headquarters open too?
Yeah. Police
So
headquarters.
I'm allowed to go in there and film too?
So what they'll do is they have an intercom, and you
Yeah.
have to stay with your businesses, and so
Yeah.
they'll come out and meet you.
Okay.
Yes, you
If
know.
the intercom's not, the door's open, you know, unrestricted, but,
The door is locked.
okay. If it's kept locked, I'm okay with the security area then.
Yes, security.
I'm okay with that.
Okay?
Okay, I just want to make sure, but thank you so much. And, I like, yeah, if you can,
See you later, buddy, good luck, okay?
if you can make your police officers aware, so like, I don't want a hot temper, officer come and, you know.
Most likely my little big name.
Okay. Yeah, there was a guy here yesterday, no, he was cool. What's his name yesterday? I knew him from before. Yeah, but otherwise, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Nice meeting you, Michael.
You
Take
too.
care, Noah.
Thank you. Take care. No hard feelings. You know, like,
Lieutenant Gigante, at what point did he yell during this intercom?
No, I said I wasn't sure if he yelled.
Okay, and now looking at the video, is there any point in which he yelled?
No, he didn't yell, but his,
Okay.
okay.
And during the conversation, Mr. Marshall said that he would be going home with his son, correct?
Yes.
And they left the school?
Yeah, how long was that interaction, by the way? Do you know?
We can talk about
Wait,
that
you
later.
have, you just have to answer
All
her
right.
questions, you can't ask her questions.
Gotcha.
And after Mr. Marshall and his son left the school, you didn't follow them, correct?
No,
And so you don't know if they actually went home, correct?
no.
And you testified on direct that about 2 hours later, at 10:30 a.m., you decided that Mr. Marshall should be evaluated by mobile crisis, correct?
No, that's not correct.
You decided that Mr. Marshall needed to be checked up on, correct?
Yes, but not at 10:30.
Okay. And
Immediately after that conversation, I had Sergeant Bruno call mobile crisis.
Mobile crisis didn't show up until 10:30, correct?
Correct.
And you went to Mr. Marshall's home around 10:30 as well?
When they showed up and they contacted police headquarters that they were there, we met them there, that's correct.
And that was because, and you called mobile crisis because you wanted Mr. Marshall to be evaluated by them, correct?
Correct.
And other officers also went to Mr. Marshall's home on that day, correct?
Yes.
And do you remember how many officers?
I believe there were 5 of us.
And could you name them?
Myself, Sergeant LeBruno, Officer Figueroa. Officer Figueroa was off that day. He was not there that day. Myself, Sergeant LeBruno, and then, so we're going down to 4, I believe, because it should have been Officer Cuevas and Officer Calderon, who are the ESU officers.
Do you remember Lieutenant Rishi was also there?
Lieutenant Dristi may have also showed up.
Do you remember if Officer Oliveira was also there?
Oliveira,
Yes.
Sergeant or Officer?
I'm not sure what his title is now, but I believe at the time his title was officer.
Well, it's important to know because there's brothers, and now one is a lieutenant
Did
and
one
the
of
other
the-
one's still an
did one of
officer.
the Oliveiras
I don't remember.
Did Officer Francolino come to the residence?
I believe he came with Lieutenant Dristi.
And your understanding is that Sergeant Larudo also contacted DCPP just out of concern regarding Mr. Marshall's son's education.
Yes, and I don't remember, I'd have to check my report, I don't remember if it was the school that did it or if it was Sergeant LeBruno, because at that point, I'm not sure which one of us notified.
Right. But you know that someone contacted DCPP because of a concern about Mr. Marshall's son's education.
Correct.
You don't have a personal relationship with the Marshall family, correct?
No.
You don't know exactly who lives in Mr. Marshall's residence with him, correct?
At this point or before? No, I didn't know.
At the time of the incident?
No,
You don't know if he was living with extended family?
I don't know.
You don't know if he had any roommates aside from his wife and son?
I don't. I could only go off of the information that was in Genesis that says who lives there.
And so you didn't know at the time?
No.
And you had no way of knowing if Mr. Marshall and his son actually went home after your conversation or went somewhere else, correct?
Right.
You don't know if they went to a friend's house, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if they went to a family member's house, correct?
Correct.
They could have gone to the park, you have no idea if they had done that?
They could have, but he should have been home logging in, but yeah, you're right.
And you testified on direct that on October 15, 2020, you didn't actually see Mr. Marshall's family when you went to the residence, correct?
No.
No, you didn't see them?
Correct. I didn't see them.
And you didn't hear anything from inside the residence, correct?
We're talking about the 15th?
On the 15th?
I didn't. I went off of what Mobile Crisis had said that they saw.
Okay, but you didn't yourself hear anything from inside?
No.
And you said that you tried to contact the family by phone, correct?
Correct.
And you got no response?
Right.
And at some point, Mobile Crisis and the police officers decided to turn back, correct?
To turn back?
Decided to leave the premises. Leave the
Mobile Crisis had to leave, as I stated, yes.
And you also decided that the police officers could also leave, correct?
Because based on the information, yes, that's correct, right? I can't go into this, so yes, correct.
And you stated in your report that you didn't feel it necessary to make a forced entry just based on your concerns, correct?
Correct.
So on this date, on the 15th, no one broke into Mr. Marshall's home, correct?
No one ever broke in, ever.
And you testified on direct that you also emailed Mr. Marshall, correct?
Correct.
And but in your report, you stated that you got an email from Mr. Marshall later that day stating there is no need for a conversation, correct?
Yes.
So he did contact you that day by email, correct?
That day, later, yes.
But you went back to Mr. Marshall's residence the next day on the 16th, correct?
I did not initially.
Were you there at Mr. Marshall's residence on the 16th?
Yes.
And because you have no personal relationship with Mr. Marshall's family, you have no idea what they were doing that day either, correct?
Correct.
They could have been at a friend's house that day.
I guess.
They could have been at a family member's house, you wouldn't know.
Sure.
They could have gone on a trip, correct?
When he was supposed to be getting his education, sure, yes.
They could have gone to the park.
Park, great adventure, sure.
And at this point, you knew from Mr. Marshall's email that he sent you the night before, the day before, that he didn't want to talk to you, correct?
I didn't say they didn't want to talk to me, just said we didn't have a conversation. Didn't mean he didn't want to talk to me.
But he said that he didn't want to have a
He
conversation.
said there was no need for a conversation.
Okay, understood. But on the 16th, you told Captain Brereton that you will do a forced entry if you can't make contact with Mr. Marshall's family that day, correct?
Yes.
And your reason for why a forced entry was now necessary was because now it would be 2 days of failure to make contact, correct?
Well, I'll be a little over 24 hours, sure.
Okay. And this is even though Mr. Marshall had sent you an email the day before saying there's no need for a conversation, right?
I don't know what the timeline was on that email. I was actually looking for it, but we have sent a new email. So, do you have it with you? I'm just curious.
You wrote in your report that on the
No,
day-
I understand that. I just don't have the timestamp on that. So,
Okay.
in other words, if I came out, while I was standing there at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock during my workday and he answered me back, and now I'm there,
Lieutenant, I
Right.
just want to go back to my question.
okay.
On the 16th, you told Captain Brereton because of your inability to make contact with Mr. Marshall and his family,
Yes,
you're going to do a forced entry, correct?
correct.
And you wrote in your report that on the 15th, Mr. Marshall did send you an email saying no need for a conversation, correct?
Just because, yes, just
Okay.
because he doesn't want a
All right.
conversation doesn't mean I don't have one with him.
And an email would be a contact, correct?
With Mr. Marshall, correct.
Okay, all right. And you also mentioned in your direct that there was a call from a neighbor, correct?
Yes,
And the neighbor was a Board of Education member.
that's correct.
She spoke with Sergeant Bruno,
That's correct.
and she told Sergeant Bruno that she had a nanny, right?
Yes,
And she said that the nanny's name is Nikki.
yes,
And this Nikki, according to this concerned citizen, is a friend of Mrs. Marshall.
yes.
And this concerned citizen said that Mrs. Marshall told Nikki about some complaints about her marriage in the past. Correct?
Yes.
And you don't know when these complaints were made.
I
Correct?
believe there was a timeline on it. I can't speak to that because I did not speak with her directly.
So you never spoke with the concerned citizen?
I did not. Sergeant LeBruno took that phone call.
So you have no personal knowledge as to when Mrs. Marshall told Nikki anything, correct?
I don't, but again, I don't know if Sergeant LeBruno had that information.
And you said on direct that you can't prove that there was any domestic violence in the past in that family, correct?
There is, but I couldn't prove it at that point that it was something. There were other past reports that we're not using with this directly.
You said that based on the information you had at this time, you couldn't prove whether there was any domestic violence, correct?
Right.
That's what you said.
What
just
I,
a moment
correct,
ago.
yeah. What I was saying is that that's my gut from 26 years of experience,
Okay.
correct.
But you just,
Sure,
you just
yes.
testified on direct that you can't prove it.
Yes, let's go with yes.
All right. You don't know Nikki's last name, correct?
No,
And to your knowledge, no one from the police department ever spoke with Nikki?
to my knowledge, no.
And so to your knowledge, no one confirmed with Nikki about what this concerned citizen told anyone?
No.
On October 16, 2022, a decision was made to make forced entry, and forced entry was made, correct?
I'm sorry, October 16th, 2022?
Yes, forced entry was made into the residence.
2022?
Sorry, 2020.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted, for the record, I wanted to be clear.
On October 16,
Uh-huh.
2020,
Yep.
there was forced entry made into the residence.
That's correct.
All right. And when forced entry was first made, Mrs. Marshallek was removed from the home? Correct?
Mrs. Marshallek came out of the home in an excited state and had to be escorted out. That's correct.
So let me just get that one more time.
Yep.
When you made forced entry, Mrs. Marshallek was taken from the home, correct?
Well, can you explain taken? Because taken kind of makes
She
it
was-
sound like we, threw it to the ground, so I'm not comfortable with that.
Let me rephrase.
Please.
At the time that you made the forced entry, the police saw Mrs. Marshallek,
Mhm.
correct?
I saw her, correct?
And Mrs. Marshallek, at that point, was taken outside the home, correct?
Yes.
Escorted by police officers.
I escorted her out because she was in an excited state. You are correct.
And Mrs. Marshallek asked for an ambulance? Is that
That's
right?
correct, yes.
Right. And are you sure about that?
Yes, I am.
And Mrs. Marshallek told the police that Mr. Marshallek and his son were in the apartment, correct?
That's correct.
And she also told you that she had no reason to believe that Mr. Marshallek would harm his son.
That's correct.
On the 16th, there were other police officers on the scene aside from yourself, correct?
Yes.
Do you know how many police officers there were?
There were several at one point. The initial, myself, and my team, which was myself, Sergeant Oliveira, Sergeant LeBruno, Officer Figueroa, I believe Lieutenant Dristy was there. I'm going to say at the initial, there was probably 5 to 8 of us.
Was Lieutenant Edmund Grishke there?
Yes,
Sergeant David Oliveira?
yes.
ESU Police Officer Nate Arocho there?
He met us there, yes.
Police Officer Ray Calderon was there?
I know he was there on the 15th, I'm not sure about the 16th.
Police Officer Robert Cuevas was there?
Yes,
Police Officer Wilfredo Gomez was there?
yes,
Police Officer Dennis Figueroa Jr. was there on the 16th?
correct.
And at one point, Detective Vito Gigante also came to the scene, correct?
That's correct.
And Captain Gino Giacobelli also came to the scene.
That's correct.
Sergeant William Collins came to the scene.
Yes.
Detective John Gomez came to the scene.
Judge, I'm going to object as to relevance at this point. So we really need a full roster of every single law enforcement officer that was on the scene at that day?
Offer?
Your Honor, I think this all goes to the situation that was happening leading up to the break-in.
Sustain. I'm sorry, I'm going to overrule it. You can do that.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
You can do it. Continue.
Chief Kenneth Ferrante was also there.
Yes.
And at one point, the SWAT team also showed up, correct?
Which SWAT?
At a SWAT team under the command of Sergeant Carlos Pugby.
The Hudson County SWAT team was activated, yes, as protocol.
And Sergeant Stephen Krantz also came.
Correct.
Sergeant Edgardo Mendez came.
I believe he's with the SWAT team, yes.
Sergeant Adam Drew came.
I believe he's with Sergeant Mendez.
Police Officer Bianca Arroyo was also there.
Yes,
Police Officer Michael Stratton was there.
yes.
Police Officer Joseph Spano was there.
Mm-hmm.
Police Officer Harry Montalvo.
Montalvo, yes, those are all at the end.
And Police Officer Chris Farrell also came.
At the end, yes.
Sergeant Luke Zetarsky was there.
Zetarsky, yes.
Police Officer Duke McCourt was there.
Maybe, I don't know.
Police Officer James Barbaro.
There were a lot of them because there was traffic control and a lot of things that were happening. So yes, there were officers stationed all around, not just right outside the house, but go ahead.
Do you remember if Police Officer Bill Bullock was there?
I believe he was with the ESU guys, so I'm gonna say yes.
That's all I have for now.
Recording right now?
It is public property right now.
Yeah, no other questions, Ms. Kim?
That's all the questions I have.
Any follow-up?
I just have a couple of very brief redirect questions, Your Honor. On cross-examination, you were asked about a student's reporting obligation to go to school. Do you remember that?
Yes,
And then you started talking about if the student is enrolled in a school. Do you remember that?
correct.
What are the requirements, to your knowledge, if a student is enrolled in a particular?
So if they're enrolled, regardless of their age, it's my understanding that they do have to show up to school. Also, I wanted to touch on, there was a remote learning prom during the pandemic, but there was something that was sent home from the school. Months before school started, you had to sign to say, I'm requesting my child to be home on virtual learning. If you did not, your child was expected to be in the school building. And that is an important piece because although they were allowing kids, if they didn't feel well, to go on remote, you didn't get to pick and choose. If you signed that saying, my child's going to be in person, you were there in person. That's what Hoboken's school policy was.
And
Sorry.
do you recall the child in question in this case, whether the option was in-person or remote learning?
So to my recollection, the principal said that he was signed up to be in person.
And on the video that we watched, you were speaking to Mr. Marshall about the remote learning option that we've been discussing. Why did you explain that to him?
Again, because I felt that the conversation was really long, and I really just wanted Noah to get his education. So that was the option, just go home, let's talk about this later. There is this option for you to get on because I had confirmed with the principal that he would be allowed to go home and continue his studies on the computer. And I felt like we just had this very long conversation that we didn't have to have out there at that point. And I use my hands entirely too much, sorry.
Excuse me,
Side
Lieutenant.
note.
I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Kim, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, now you're excused from the witness stand, thank you. For your time here today. Any other witnesses?
Yes, Judge, I just have one additional witness, Dennis Figueroa.
Dennis Figueroa to the stand. Sir, please come take a stand over here, remain standing, the court officer is going to swear you in.
Just want to step with the wires.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Dennis Anthony Figueroa Jr., Hoboken Police Department.
Please have a seat.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your witness,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Murray.
Your Honor. Sergeant, I'm just going to ask that you keep your voice up. The microphone in front of you only records, it doesn't amplify, okay?
Okay.
Where do you work?
Hoboken Police Department.
How long have you worked for the Hoboken Police Department?
9 years.
What ranks have you held within the Hoboken Police Department?
Patrolman and sergeant.
What are some of the duties and responsibilities that you had within the Hoboken Police Department?
I was assigned to patrol uniform for my first 6 years. Then I was assigned to the school bureau, and now I'm back assigned to uniform patrol.
In October of 2020, do you remember which of those responsibilities you were working in?
Yes, I was assigned to the school bureau.
And were you a sergeant, or did you hold some other rank at that time?
I was a patrol officer.
And what were your responsibilities as a patrol officer in the school bureau? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What were your responsibilities in the school bureau?
We spent most of our time within the public schools of Hoboken, as well as, patrol if they needed us.
I'm going to draw your attention back to October 16th of 2020. Do you remember that date?
Yes.
Were you working that date?
Yes.
And what were your responsibilities on that date?
I was, like I said, I was assigned to the school bureau.
Did there come a time that you responded to 736 Garden Street in Hoboken?
Yes.
Why did you go there?
I responded to meet with the Department of Child Protection and Permanency.
Do you remember why you met DCP&P caseworkers there?
They were looking to speak with the individuals that lived in that home.
When you arrived at 736 Garden Street, what did you do first?
We knocked on the door, but we didn't get any answer.
Approximately how long did you knock on the door for?
The first time we were there, we weren't there long, a few minutes.
And who was it actually knocking on the door?
DCP&P.
And where were you positioned when DCP&P was knocking on the door?
I was right next to them. I was with them.
How far away?
A couple feet.
So what happened after you did not receive a response at the door?
I notified my immediate supervisor of the situation that we weren't able to get in contact.
Who was your immediate supervisor at the time?
Sergeant LeBruno.
And what happened after you informed Sergeant LeBruno what happened?
He made our lieutenant aware of the situation.
So what did you do after you received no response at the door?
After we received no response at the door, I went back on patrol, or back to my school, until I was told to do otherwise.
Did there come a time where the people or the family at 736 Garden Street came to your attention again later that afternoon, that same day?
Yes.
Why did the situation come to your attention once again?
We were sent back there to do a welfare check.
Why were you sent back there to do a welfare check?
My sergeant received information from a citizen in regards to the family, and the individual asked if we could do a check to make sure everybody was okay in the home.
Do you know how your sergeant received that information?
Through dispatch. I believe through phone call within the dispatch room.
Okay, and at this time, Your Honor, I'd like to play what was previously marked as S1, which I believe there's a stipulation to we discussed.
Yes.
Your Honor, I don't know that, I stipulated to the authenticity of the call, but I'm not sure that Mr. Figueroa has, or Officer Sergeant Figueroa has any personal knowledge of the audio. So if there are any questions directed at Sergeant Figueroa.
Foundation.
Well, Your Honor, isn't the stipulation to the authenticity? I thought that's what we were talking about.
If he's going to be asked questions about the call, I think that there needs to be foundation as to whether he even knew about the call or heard the call itself.
I am not going to ask Sergeant Figueroa about the call itself. I'm merely playing it now as part of the investigative sequence that the officers took that day. The sergeant testified that they received the call, and that's what prompted them to go back.
And Your Honor, I think we can play that at a later time. I don't think that we need to let sequestration. There's a sequestration order. I don't think that Sergeant Figueroa, it's proper for him to listen to it, frankly.
Has he ever heard it before?
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
Has he ever heard it before?
Frankly, I don't know. Sergeant, have you ever heard it before?
No.
Then why would this witness hear it now?
Your Honor,
For
I'm
what
happy to
purpose?
play it. I'm happy to play it outside of the presence of the witness. The main purpose, Your Honor, is you, frankly, hearing the call for purposes.
Then we don't need this witness on the stand for that purpose.
Perfect, Your Honor. Thank you. So you responded back to 736 Garden Street, is that correct?
Yes.
And what did you do when you responded there?
Again, we knocked on the door to try to get an answer from anybody that was inside.
So when we're talking about the second time you went to 736 Garden Street, is that correct?
Yes.
Who were you with?
I was with my sergeant, I was with my lieutenant, and then as we were there, more individuals. ESU units were there, other patrol units.
So when you first responded to the residents, what was the first action that you took?
Are we still we're talking about the second time, right?
Correct.
My first,
Only the second
okay.
time we're talking about here.
We knocked on the door multiple times. We were knocking on the windows. We were attempting to just see if anybody was inside and just to make sure everybody was okay.
What methods, did you take to make communication with anybody that was inside?
Like I said, knocking on the windows, knocking on the doors, calling out individuals' names, and trying to get them to respond to us.
Which individuals' names were you calling out?
Michael, Mr. Marshallek, I believe his last name was.
And
That's how you pronounce it.
My apologies for cutting you off, Sergeant. How did you know either of those names, whether Michael or Mr. Marshallek?
It was given to me by my bosses, and my bosses told me that those are the individuals that we were looking to speak with.
Approximately how long were you and other officers attempting to make contact with people inside the residence?
From the outside, I would probably say upwards of a half hour, probably.
And what do you mean by from the outside?
Like from the exterior of the building.
Was there another time that you attempted to make contact with people inside of the residence?
Yeah, once we were inside the apartment or the home.
At this time, Your Honor, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Ms. Kim?
Yes, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
When you're handling an incident, it's common procedure to write a police report, correct?
Correct.
And you wrote a police report for what happened on October 16, 2020?
Correct.
And you know that these police reports may be used in the future.
Correct?
You said a hearing like this, correct?
Correct.
Maybe use at a later time at trial, correct?
Correct.
All right, so it's important that what you write in these reports to be the truth, correct?
Correct.
And it's important to include all relevant information, is that right?
Yep.
And it's important to write a report because memory fades over time, is that right?
Yes.
And you don't know when you're being called to testify. So a report can help jog your memory, correct?
Correct.
You testified that on October 16, 2020, you were dispatched to 736 Garden Street, correct?
Correct.
And you understood that to be Mr. Marshall's residence, correct?
Correct.
And at that time, you were under the command of Lieutenant Gigante.
Correct.
And when you first got there, you were briefed on what happened the day before, is that right?
Correct.
But you were not on the scene the day before, correct?
No, I was not.
And it was your understanding that the day before, Hoboken Police also tried to make contact with Mr. Marshall and his family, correct?
To my understanding, yes.
And you wrote in your report that someone named Milani Kadamori called the police, correct?
Correct.
And your understanding is that she was the Board of Education.
Your Honor, objection. Now the witness is being asked about the exact same phone call that I wasn't allowed to play for him. So I'm
Your
not.
Honor, this is all in his report. I'm happy to.
If she's talking about his report.
It's in his report, which is why I requested to play the phone call.
But we asked him if he heard it, and he said no. She
He
can
never heard the
question
audio,
him.
but he wrote down what happened in the report.
That's okay, I got it. As overruled.
And she apparently spoke with Sergeant LeBruno, correct?
Correct.
You never spoke with him directly, is that right?
No, I did not.
Okay. And she told Sergeant LeBruno that you had a nanny, correct?
Say it again? I'm
You
sorry.
had a nanny?
Correct.
And she said that the nanny's name was Nikki, correct?
Correct.
You never spoke with Nikki, correct?
No.
And you don't know if anyone else spoke with Nikki, correct?
No, I don't know who else would have spoke to her, no.
Okay. But you have no knowledge of anyone speaking with Nikki, correct?
No,
Do you know Nikki's last name?
I do not.
On the 16th, you testified that the Hoboken Police tried to get into contact with Mr. Marshall's family, correct?
Correct.
You don't know Mr. Marshall's family personally, correct?
Personally, no.
So at this time, when you don't know where they are, correct?
Correct.
And when you're not getting any response, you don't know why they're not answering, correct?
Correct.
You don't know how many people live inside the apartment, correct?
I was probably briefed on who should be in the apartment.
So you think that you might have been briefed, but you were not sure who were actually.
I didn't have an
inside the
exact
apartment.
number of who was inside the apartment, no.
And you don't know who worked in the apartment at the time of the incident that you were at the time that you were on the scene, correct?
Correct.
They could have not been home, is that right?
Sure.
They could have been visiting friends, correct?
Yes. Yes, sorry.
They could have been visiting family, correct?
Correct.
They could have taken a trip, correct?
Judge, objection. Can we suffice to say they could have been somewhere other than home?
This is a different witness. I understand the objection. Overruled.
Answer the question. So they could have been with family, correct?
Correct.
They could have been on a trip, correct?
Correct.
So you said you thought it was possible that there were people in the apartment, but you weren't sure, correct?
Correct.
And because you didn't know who was inside, you had no information as to what they were doing, correct? If there were people inside.
Correct.
And on this day, Lieutenant Gigante decided if he didn't get a response from anyone from the apartment, that they would go to a forced entry.
Correct.
And about 4 different officers made forced entry into the home, correct?
Correct.
Did that include Police Officer Orocho?
Yes.
Police Officer Calderon was also
Yes.
one of them? Police Officer Gomez also made forced entry?
Yes.
Police Officer Cuevas also made forced entry?
Yes.
And all of these officers were armed, correct?
Yes.
And when they made entry, they first broke into the first door of the home, correct?
Correct.
And then they broke into the second door to the home, correct?
I don't remember the exact layout. I believe that just that front door was, I could be, I don't recall how many doors were.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at your report?
Sure.
D2 for identification.
I would like to mark this as D2 for identification.
Sorry. Okay.
So does that refresh your recollection as to
Yes.
the fact that a second door was also broken into?
No, I believe the first door was broken into, and then the second door was opened. I believe I wrote opened, but I believe it was the female that had opened the door as we were coming up to the second door.
You said that the second door was successfully opened, correct?
Yeah.
And after the police officers made entry, they saw Mrs. Marshalek, correct?
Correct.
And Mrs. Marshalek asked why the police were in her home, correct?
Correct.
And she was immediately removed from the home, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't report that she had any injuries on her, correct?
Correct.
And at this time, the Hoboken police did not see where Mr. Marshalek or his son was, correct?
Correct.
And Hoboken police then left the home, correct?
We didn't leave. We were in the hallway still.
Okay. At this point, they didn't make any further advancements.
Correct.
And about 2 hours after this initial entry, the SWAT team came to the scene, correct?
Correct.
All right. And when the SWAT team came, they broke in and removed Mr. Marshalek and his son from the home, correct?
Correct.
And when Mr. Marshalek's son was taken out of the house, he was not injured, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
No further questions.
Mr. Murray,
I have nothing, Your Honor. Thank you.
you're excused from the witness stand. Thank you for your
Thank you, Your
time
Honor.
today. Mr. Murray, any other witnesses?
I do not have any other witnesses at this time, Your Honor, but I would like the
Like to
opportunity.
play us one?
Yes, Your
Go
Honor,
ahead,
please.
please play us one.
I'll wait until the witness takes the room, Your Honor.
May I play it, John?
Go ahead, Mr. Murray.
Hoboken Police, I'm going to find out here.
Hi, you have a friend number for 636, well, my friend, I know the 636 is a basement house. Her son goes to my daughter's school and she used to sometimes come and take care of my mom. We haven't heard from them and I'm a little concerned for there's been issues lately with the husband and they have a son. And I'm just a little concerned because I walked by, I guess maybe 3 times in the last 24 hours and it's like, they have the shades down but pitch black in there.
Okay, you gotta give me the address, 636.
Oh, 636 Garden, and it's the basement apartment, downstairs apartment.
636 Garden Basement Apartment, and, give me your name first, what's your name?
So I only know where it's Phi because it's a Thai nickname, so Phi, so F-A-I.
F-A-I?
Mm-hmm.
That's their last name?
No, that's her first name. Their last name
And
is...
what's your last name?
Mashalek. It's M-A, S as in Sam, H like Henry, E-L-E-K.
National. Okay, and, do you know her phone number?
I don't. No. I
Okay.
can get it. I can call you back with it.
Yeah, maybe, what's your first name?
Milani, M-A-L-A-N-I.
And your last name?
Cabinatory, D-A-D like David, E-N as in Mary, A-R, T-O-R-I.
Okay, and what was so you haven't spoken with them in how long?
So I haven't, I walked by the house today and it's been pitch dark in there for at least the last, I want to say, maybe a little less than 24 hours. But the biggest issue is that I know there have been some issues lately with the husband. And, there was some concern. I actually think that he talked to him out there yesterday.
Okay, the police were there yesterday? Okay, what are you afraid of? That someone's hurt in there or that there's an injury?
Yeah, that is actually what he's afraid of. Because
Okay.
the subjects of the school dates, they're actually on the board too, so there's like all different intersections of this. So
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna look up if they went there yesterday. Because you're saying that they yesterday? Let's see,
Yeah.
636 Garden.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Okay. Okay. This is a different person. Is there someone there? Alexandra Scangiani?
You mean there was a
that's
person downstairs?
No,
Yes.
that's a totally different call then. Hold on.
Okay. Like, I'm not able to...
Did you try knocking on their door?
I heard that their door was knocked down earlier by some authorities, and nobody answered, but I didn't try
By
that.
some authorities?
Because there's barely, well, I heard that I go be sure. I heard the child protective was there earlier today and knocked on the door.
There was a detective there today?
No, child protective services, should be.
Oh, Child Protective Services.
Yeah, 99.
Okay. All right, are you,
I just,
We can go.
to be really honest with you, I don't want to knock on the door because this is my personal opinion. I think he's crazy, so I'm concerned about that too.
Because we can go there, we can knock on the door, but, we're not gonna break down the door right now. Let me, I'm gonna run it by Sergeant. Hold on a second. Don't. Ma'am, how do you know this woman? Is your neighbor?
No, it's actually very complicated, but I'll try to explain it. So his wife, Ty, she used to come over and take care of my mother, who's also toxic, right? So she would come over, and she was friends with my nanny, so she was with my mom and stuff like that. And my nanny, who I'm still very good friends with, used to be her friend. Ty stopped talking to her suddenly a couple months ago. And now, even though my nanny, Nikki, has texted her and called her and everything, she hasn't responded at all.
Please. One second.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, go on.
So that's 10 minutes. I don't, my nanny, who's really my friend Nikki, who's friends with her, tried to text her a couple times, tried to call her, just to make sure she was okay. She hasn't responded at all.
Okay. All right.
That may not be unusual for her, but I'm just concerned, that's all, about her and her problem.
Okay. 7, 5, 3, 1, 6, 7, 9, 4. Okay. All right. I'm gonna run it by Sergeant. I'll call you back if I have any more questions. So Phi is the female, right?
Yeah.
Do you know her date of birth?
I don't.
She's of Asian descent?
Yes, she's high. She's high nation.
Okay, and this, and... Okay, all right, I'll call you back if I have another question. Thank you, man.
Okay, thank you.
else, Mr. Murray?
Just, there is a second part of the phone call, Your Honor, but it's only about, I think, a minute and a half.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi, this is Hoboken Police. Is this Melania?
Yes.
Okay, are you still in Hoboken?
Yes, I'm like a block away from them on.
Can you go meet the officers there? Can you go meet the officers there?
Okay.
They're gonna go and knock on the door right now. And then just explain to them further, like, what you're experiencing, so they have full clarity.
Okay. I'm a little scared of that. Like, I know he knows where I live, so I'm a little afraid of him. So do we do it like a little down the block so he doesn't see me?
Yeah. Want to meet them at 6th and Garden?
In front of Mario's or something?
Where's Mario? 6th and Garden?
Mario's on the corner of 8th and Garden.
8th and Garden? Okay.
Yeah, he just says it's at 7:36.
Okay. Where are you right now?
It's 7:36 at the basement. I'm on 6th and.
Oh, it's 7:36.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I just realized that.
Okay. All right.
I'm also confused because I'm at 6:32.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Okay.
That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. So any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, but I would like to at first play the audio that.
Hang on, I have the interpreter. I have to do the interpreter if you're going to use the interpreter.
Well, I have I'll bring her in.
Oh, okay. You want me to just text Melissa? Okay. Sounds good.
Who are you calling?
I'm calling Mrs. Marshall.
Okay, Ms. Feig.
And she requires
The interpreter. Can you come please take the stand? And I have the interpreter here. Could you please tell her to take the stand? And to remain standing, and the court officer will swear her in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony about the court today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, I do. Can you state your full name for the record? Thank you.
Okay, you may have a seat.
Interpreter, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to interpret accurately, impartially, to the best of your ability as an official court interpreter?
I do.
Please state your full name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Marshall, what is your first language?
Hi.
And what language are you the most comfortable with?
Hi.
And how do you know Mr. Michael Marshall?
My husband,
Do you have any children together?
one son.
And how old is your son?
I need the interpreter to please speak up because we're having trouble picking you up on the recording. I'm sorry. Maybe. I don't know if it'll be helpful if maybe you stand in front by the microphone. Oh, wait, never mind. Let me give you this. Will this help?
Yes.
You can hold this, and that might be more helpful. But I did need you to speak up a little so that we could hear you on the recording.
And
6 years old.
And how would you describe Mr. Marshall as a father?
คุณอธิบายสามีคุณเป็นยังไงให้กับลูกชาย
เป็นคนที่รักลูกมาก
He loves his son very much.
แล้วก็เป็นคนที่ทำทุกอย่างเพื่อครอบครัว
He does everything for the family.
Where do you live currently?
อยู่ที่ไหนครับ
อยู่ที่ 736 Garden Street
736 Garland Street,
Hoboken ค่ะ
Hoboken.
Is there an apartment number?
River apartment
Apartment 1 ค่ะ
apartment 1.
And is that where you lived at in October 2020?
อันนั้นอยู่ตอนตุลา20ปี2020
ใช่ค่ะ
Yes.
In October 2020, who else lived in that apartment?
ตอนตุลา2020 ใครบ้างอยู่ที่ไหน
มีสามีแล้วก็ลูกชาย
My husband, me, and my son,
and my dog แล้วก็หมาหนึ่งคน
and my dog.
I'm going to show you what has been previously marked as D5A.
จะให้ดูเอกสาร
Did he have to show you adversary?
I have not seen this, Your
It's
Honor.
okay, let,
เอกสารจะให้
Your Honor, like a copy of this.
sure.
Do you recognize this?
เห็นรู้จักเป็นอะไรครับ Yes.
And what is this?
เป็นอะไร
เป็นเหมือนแบบ floor plan ที่บ้าน
floor plan it's a floor plan to my house.
And this is a fair and accurate depiction of your residence?
เป็นความจริงหรือเปล่าเป็นห้องที่เห็นที่เขาวาดอยู่ตอนนี้
ก็ถูกต้องค่ะ
Yes, it is.
And in October 2020,
ตอนตุลา20
what kind of doorknob did the door to the back room have?
เป็นประตูมันต้องที่หมุนประตูมันเป็นยังไง
ก็เป็นที่เปิดธรรมดาแล้วแบบไม่มีล็อกค่ะ
It's a regular back door knob with no lock.
And what kind of door did the walk-in closet inside what kind of doorknob did the door leading to the walk-in closet have?
แล้วก็จะตรงประตู closet ข้างหลังเรามีประตูมีเนี่ยที่มีมือถือค่ะ
เป็นประตูดอร์น็อบธรรมดาที่ว่าไม่มีคือมันเหมือนแบบเป็น
It's a doorknob, regular doorknob.
มันเป็นประตูแบบประตูที่เป็นคลอเซ็ตธรรมดาแล้วก็มันล็อกไม่ได้อะ
A regular closet cannot be locked.
Do you remember what happened on October 16, 2020?
คุณจำได้ไหมว่าตุลา16วันที่16 2020 Yes, I do.
What happened on that day?
เกิดอะไรขึ้น
ก็คือตอนแรกอยู่ห้องนอนห้องนี้
I was in the bedroom in the back.
แล้วก็ได้ยินเสียงดัง
I heard a loud noise
มาจากข้างหน้า
from the front,
แล้วก็เลยวิ่งออกมาอยู่ข้างนอก
so I ran out.
When you were in the back bedroom before you heard the loud noise, what were you doing?
คุณทำอะไรอยู่ที่ห้องนอน
ดูทีวีค่ะ
I was watching TV.
And when you heard the loud noise, what happened?
ตอนที่คุณได้ยินเสียงหลังอะไรเกิดขึ้น
ก็วิ่งออกมาแล้วก็มาตรงที่ประตู
I ran outside to the room door where it says vestibule. That's where she's marking.
And did you find out why you heard the loud noise?
แล้วทำไมถึงได้ยินเสียงดังนั้นเป็นอะไรเกิดขึ้น
ก็คือพอเปิดประตูออกไป เห็นสวาททีมอยู่ตรงนี้
When I opened it, I saw the SWAT team there at that door, one vestibule.
And what did those officers do?
แล้วเขาตำรวจนั้นฟังเขาคุณเห็นเขาทำอะไร
เขามีปืนแล้วก็ชี้มาที่ตัวดิฉันนะคะ
He had a gun and was pointing at me.
Did they say anything to you?
เขาพูดอะไรคะ
พูดว่ายกมือขึ้น
Put your hands up.
And then what happened?
แล้วหลังจากนั้นเกิดอะไรเกิดขึ้น
ก็บอกกับสวัสดทีมว่า คุณจะยิงฉันเหรอ
I said to the SWAT team, are you going to shoot at me?
And did they respond to you?
แล้วเขาตอบว่าไง
พูดแค่ว่ายกมือขึ้น
They said, put your hands up.
And at a certain point, did you leave the apartment?
คุณออกจากอพาร์ตเมนต์หรือเปล่า
คือตัวสวัสดทีมเขาดึงตัวดิฉันออกไปค่ะ
They pulled me out.
And where did you go after they pulled you out?
หลังจากเขาพูดคุณไปไหนเขาพาคุณไปไหน
เขาพาไปที่ฮอลเวย์ของคอนโดชั้นบนนะคะ
They took me to the hallway to the condo that leads upstairs.
And how long did you stay there for?
แล้วอยู่นานเท่าไหร่
น่าจะประมาณสักไม่แน่ใจนะคะน่าจะประมาณสัก30 นาทีถึง1 ชั่วโมง
I'm not exactly sure, but maybe about 30 minutes to about 1 hour.
And where did you go after that?
แล้วหลังจากนั้นคุณไปไหน
ตำรวจพาไปที่ในโรงพยาบาลค่ะ
The police lead me to the ambulance.
Do you know why you went into the ambulance?
ทำไมถึงไปรถทางคุณ
ไม่รู้เลยค่ะ
I'm not sure.
Do you know whose idea it was for you to go inside the ambulance?
แล้วใครเป็นคนที่บอกให้คุณไป
ไม่รู้ค่ะ
I don't know.
And how long were you in the ambulance for?
แล้วอยู่ในรถประมาณเท่าไหร่
นานค่ะแบบหลายชั่วโมงเลยค่ะ
Many hours.
And were you able to leave the ambulance?
แล้วคุณไปทิ้งที่ตรงนั้นหรือเปล่า
ตำรวจไม่ให้ออกค่ะ
The police said I could not leave.
And after you left the apartment, do you know what your husband, Mr. Marshall, did?
และหลังจากคุณออกจากอพาร์ตเมนต์แล้วสามีคุณที่ไหน
ไม่ทราบเลยค่ะ
I don't know.
Do you know what your son did after you left the apartment?
หลังจากคุณออกจากอพาร์ตเมนต์แล้วลูกชายคุณทำอะไร
ไม่ทราบค่ะ
I don't know.
Do you know why the police stayed near your residence after you were taken out?
หลังจากคุณออกจากอพาร์ตเมนต์ทำไมคุณรู้เปล่าว่าทำไมถึงตำรวจยังอยู่ที่บ้านคุณ
คือไม่ทราบว่าทำไมเขายังอยู่
I don't really know why they were still there,
แต่คือ
but
เขาคอยถามแต่ว่าสามีอยู่ไหน
they kept asking me, where is your husband?
ถามว่าลูกชายอยู่ไหน
Where is your son?
At one point, your husband, Mr. Marshall, got arrested, right?
สามีคุณเคยถูกจับปะ
ก็คือเขาบอกว่าจับได้ตำรวจบอกว่าจับสามีได้แล้ว
The police told her that they took her husband.
And what happened after the police took your husband?
แล้วหลังจากตำรวจสามีคุณแล้วอะไรเกิดขึ้น
เขาก็พาตัวดิฉันกับลูกชายไปที่สถานีตำรวจ
They took me and my son to the police station.
How has this day affected your family?
Objection as to relevance, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Thank you.
I'm going to show you, after the police left, what did your apartment look like?
หลังจากตำรวจออกจากบ้าน
Objection once again as to relevance.
เขาไม่ให้
And that one I'm gonna allow overruled.
After the police left, what did your apartment look like?
หลังจากตำรวจออกจากบ้านคุณแล้วบ้านคุณเป็นยังไง
เละเทะมากค่ะ
It was a big mess. We have color photos from our judge, but,
I'm gonna show you a photo that I'm gonna mark for identification purposes as D3.
เขาบอกเขาจะให้ดูรูปภาพที่เป็นเรียกว่า D3
Oh, and I'm gonna, sorry, I only have the one copy today.
Okay, thank you.
What is that photo?
เป็นรูปอะไร
เป็นรูปประตูแรกที่เข้ามาจากข้างนอกกับ hallway ค่ะ
It's the doorway, the first main doorway from the outside to inside.
And who took this photo?
ใครถ่ายรูป
ตัวดิฉันเป็นคนถ่ายเองค่ะ
I was
Okay,
the
let
one
me
who
see you
took
at
the picture.
sidebar.
I'm just trying to gauge the time.
Oh, I'm looking at it.
No, I don't want to rush, I just have to schedule timing because we're gonna go past.
I think I just have like 4 photos and then,
Do you have any other ones that?
I have, that's really efficient.
No, because I can't keep it past 4:30, so that's what I'm saying.
No,
I mean, I'll finish with this one.
She'll be 5 minutes and then my investigator will be like 2.
And the sidewalk. Go ahead.
What is that a picture of?
เป็นรูปอะไรนะคะ
เป็นรูปประตูแรกที่ออกมาจากที่เป็นประตูที่เชื่อมระหว่างข้างนอกกับ hallway ค่ะ
It's the first door from the hallway from outside to inside.
And when did you take this picture?
แล้วคุณถ่ายรูปเมื่อไหร่
ถ่ายเช้าวันเสาร์ถัดมาค่ะ
Saturday, the following Saturday in the morning.
Judge, motion to put that into evidence.
Objection?
I have no objection.
Okay, where did we mark that? D?
D3, Your Honor.
D3 is admitted in evidence.
I just, if I can get a copy at some
Yes,
point,
I'll
please.
provide.
Thank you.
I'm
You
going to
can
show
use
you
it.
another photo. Marked as D4.
นี่คือรูป D4
What is that a photo of?
อันนี้เป็นรูปอะไรคะ
เป็นรูปจาก hallway แล้วก็ระหว่างเป็นประตูที่กั้นระหว่าง hallway กับคอนโดยูนิตที่เข้ามาในห้องไปอพาร์ตเมนต์ดิฉัน
This is the doorway from the hallway to my apartment.
And who took that photo?
แล้วใครถ่ายรูปนี้
ดิฉันเป็นคนถ่ายค่ะ
I did.
And when did you take that photo?
แล้วถ่ายเมื่อไหร่
ถ่ายคืนวันที่เกิดเหตุเลยค่ะ
The same day that it happened.
And just for clarification, what date is that?
เป็นวันที่วันไหน
คืนวันศุกร์ค่ะ คืนวันศุกร์วันที่เกิดเหตุค่ะ
The day of the incident on Friday night.
Judge, motion to put that into evidence. D4 is on there.
No objection, Your Honor.
D4 is moved in evidence.
I'm going to show you what will be marked as D5.
นี่เป็นรูปว่า D5
Did you show Mr.?
Yes.
We could proceed, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay.
What is that photo?
นี่เป็นรูปอะไรคะ
เป็นรูปเป็นห้องนอนข้างหลังติดกับเขาเรียกว่า patio ที่ไปหลังบ้าน
This is the bedroom that's next to the patio that goes to the back.
And who took that photo?
ใครถ่ายรูปนี้
ตัวดิฉันเป็นคนถ่าย
I did.
And what is the photo depicting?
แล้วรูปนี้ให้ดูอะไรบ้างมันเห็นอะไรบ้าง
ก็คือตำรวจทำลายประตู
The police destroyed the door
แล้วก็มีเศษแก้ว
and there was glass shattered
เต็มบริเวณพื้น
all over the floor
แล้วก็มีเป็นพลาสติกคลุมไว้
and there's a plastic covering it
เพราะว่าวันนั้นคืนนั้นอากาศหนาวมาก
and it was really cold that night.
คือไม่สามารถที่จะนอนได้เลย
I would not be able to sleep without putting plastic.
Your Honor, motion to move that into evidence D5.
No objection.
D5 is moved in evidence.
Your Honor, I would also like to move to have the diagram into evidence. I'm not sure if
did, it's a D5A I have here, but we could move it as D6.
D6, that's D6.
D6 is moved in evidence, she did testify as to that.
โอเค
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Mr. Murray, your witness.
Very briefly, Your Honor, thank you.
And I found the exhibit, it was right. So I can.
That's fine, you can move those in. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Marshall. How long have you lived at 736 Garden Street?
อยู่ที่ address ที่736 Garland Street กี่ปีแล้วครับ
11 ปีค่ะ
11 years
Do you remember when you moved in?
คุณจำได้ตอนที่คุณเข้า
จำได้
Yes I do
Do you remember what date it was?
คุณจำได้ว่าตอนวันไหนที่ไหน
จำวันไม่ได้แต่จำได้ว่าเดือนไหนค่ะ
I don't remember the day but I remember the month
So I'm going to take you back to July of 2016. Do you remember?
Objection, Your Honor. I think this is beyond the scope of the direct.
Your Honor, if I may have, I could provide a proffer.
Proffer.
Not to in front of the witness, Your Honor.
Let's go to sidebar. Sidebar begins.
I'm sorry, I don't want to crowd everybody's
Go ahead.
personal space.
Okay.
Your Honor, what I was specifically getting at is on July 14th, 2016, Mr. Marshallek was arrested in their residence and Mrs. Marshallek was granted a temporary restraining order.
What does that have to do with anything?
Because the whole issue in the case, Your Honor, is dangerousness either to his wife or the child.
In 2020? Well, nobody testified as to why they busted into their house on that day.
It's a totality of the circumstances test, Your Honor.
What officer testified as to that?
As to...
Sustained.
Okay.
And the flag.
Your Honor, I have no questions for the witness.
Anything else, Ms. Kim?
Your Honor, I just have one additional witness, Stephanie Jerome.
Oh, so you're done with this
Yes.
witness? You're excused from the witness stand. Thank you for your time here today.
ขอบคุณมากที่มารับ
And thank you to the interpreter.
ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you
Your next witness, Ms. Kim.
Yes. Oh. Are you Stephanie Jerome?
What do you want?
No.
She could stay here at this point.
Is there any objection to her remaining?
She could stay at this point. She could stay in the courtroom at this point. She's already testified. Wait, is this the investigation? You may take the stand. And there's a lot of confusion in this moment. You can come take the stand. The officer's going to swear you in.
You're welcome.
Please remain standing while the officer swears you in.
Please raise your right hand. You swear affirm that the testimony about the give forward is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes
What's the change for the record?
Stephanie Jerez
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name.
Stephanie Jerez
Thank you.
You're welcome
Good afternoon. Could you spell your last name for the record?
Yes Jerez
Where do you work?
I work for the Office of the Public Defender
And what is your role there?
I'm an investigator
And how long have you worked as the officer?
since October 12, 2018
Are you familiar with the apartment at 736 Garden Street, apartment 1, Hoboken, New Jersey?
Yes I am
And how are you familiar with that apartment?
I went to the location on 2 separate occasions, May 13, 2022, and July 7, 2022.
And what was the purpose of these visits?
To take measurements, do photographs, and also to draw a diagram of the layout for the apartment.
I'm showing you what has been marked as Exhibit D6.
Excuse me.
Do you recognize this document?
I do.
And what is this document?
This is the drawing of the diagram of the apartment that I drew.
And I like to show you a document that I will be marking as Exhibit D7. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
And what is this document?
D7 is the layout of the apartment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Could you describe the entrance of the apartment using D6?
Sure. So D6, pardon. The entrance would be on this bottom, and there's door 1, which leads you to the entrance of the building, followed by a vestibule, and there's a second door which would lead you to the living space of the apartment.
And using that same exhibit, could you describe the rooms of the apartment?
Sure. It is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, living room, and a kitchen on the ground level.
And how is the front room separated from the living room?
It has 2 French doors.
How is the bathroom separated from the front room?
It has a single door.
And what is in the back room?
In the back room would be the walk-in closet and the bathroom. And then towards the back of the back room would be the patio doors.
And using Exhibit D7, could you, if Your Honor, if you would like a copy?
When you're done, we'll take it.
Using D7, could you show where the walk-in closet is?
Sure, it is right here.
You would like a copy?
On the fact
Right
line.
here,
No, it doesn't matter because I wouldn't be able to see. Go ahead, that's fine.
Right. And you mentioned that you took measurements during your visit?
That is correct, yes.
What did you measure?
The walk-in closet.
What tools did you use?
I use a state-issued measuring wheel, and it is brand Kesson.
And what is the length of the entire walk-in closet?
The length of the entire walk-in closet is 19 feet and 2 inches.
And what is the width of the entire walk-in closet?
5 feet and 6 inches.
No further questions at this time.
Mr. Murray, your witness.
I just have a very quick follow-up question. Those measurements, are you referring to a report, or is that off the top of your head?
The measurements, no, I went personally to the address, and I used the measuring tool to take the measurements.
Okay, just what I was asking is the diagram that I have doesn't have any measurements on it. That was off the top of your head, your recollection of the closet.
That is
measurements.
correct, yes.
Okay, I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Murray, anything else?
No, nothing else from you, Your Honor.
You're excused from the witness stand. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time here today. Anything else, Ms. Kim?
No, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Murray?
No, Your Honor, just one request I wanted to make. I don't know if I ever formally...
Sorry, I apologize. Now that we're talking about the audio, I do have that audio that was also stipulated to, if you'd like to play it.
Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, Judge, we stipulated to, but I don't know if I ever formally moved S1 into evidence for purposes of this matter.
Okay, I'll let you witness.
And if I could just quickly play it. And
Sure, no problem.
D8.
You may play D8.
Hey, John Ryan, what's going on? Okay, this is what happened. The initial call came in at 6:36, which she repeated multiple times. She's now admitting that she was wrong. She meant 7:36. Okay, cool. This job has now changed. It's now changed from us responding for a welfare check to me. I basically now just have to relay to this woman that yes, in fact, we have dealt with these people and we are handling the situation. She's like, oh, I'm concerned about the family and this guy's scared. Okay, but nothing is currently happening. All right, no. Deep breath now. Huh? Who was the woman calling that's saying that she's concerned about the people in that apartment? Is the woman a family member? The woman had 5 martial athletes wife as like a babysitter, I guess weeks ago. And now, because she was her babysitter, she's like, oh, I'm concerned about their family and this and that. What is she concerned about? Why? She said the lights haven't been on in the apartment for 24 hours, and I'm concerned that there's a domestic violence incident happening at that residence. I think it might have happened in the past. Okay. So it was a welfare. It was going to be a welfare check at 6:36. Like, no breaking down the doors, just seeing if if there's something happening right now. And now it turns out it's actually at 7:36. Okay. So can you get me the phone number? Can you give me contact information of this nanny that used to babysit for them and that she's concerned? Has she spoken to the wife at all? No, she doesn't even know this person's phone number. So we know, like that she was not. I just want to say to you, like, you said she was a nanny. I agree. She's basically a concerned person that knows. So, okay, so can we get her phone number and all that stuff? I can go for it. Yes, I have it right now, actually. You want the phone number? Yeah, give me 1 second. Yeah, give me the phone. 917 531 6794. Okay, 917-531-6794. What's your name? Malani, Malani. Okay. Cadmore. Her last name's Cadmore Porney. Cenearpori. Okay. Got it. And she's worried about what's happening in the apartment, and it was going to be a welfare check, and it turns out it's at this person's residence. Got it. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Kim.
I would like to move this into evidence as
T18. Okay. All right, counsel, so what I would have liked to, I would have heard your argument today on this. I could either bring you back for argument or have you submit. What do you wish to do?
Submit as in submit to the court or submit a written application?
Either one. What do you want?
Do you have a preference either way?
Your Honor, I'm happy to make a written application.
Mr. Murray?
I can submit a supplemental brief to Your
Do
Honor.
you guys want to do something by, if I give you till July 21st, 2 weeks?
Sure.
Simultaneous submissions?
Yes, Your Honor.
And then I could always give you an opportunity to respond if you so wish.
Yes, Your Honor.
What?
Sorry, Your Honor. I'm also going to request a transcript of today's hearing as well, but it's not going to be ready by the 21st. I could submit my brief without it.
Do you want to? I mean, I just want to try to give Ms. Kim a chance to brief this herself.
Will you give me a chance to brief it, Your Honor?
I want her, I want you to make the submission.
Right.
I mean, somebody from your office could maybe supplement, but I want to give you the opportunity.
No, I will be able to make the application. No, I'll be here, Your Honor.
Not if we're waiting for brief, not if we're waiting for transcripts.
Judge, I'm ordering the transcript and I'll share it with counsel, obviously, and the court when it's completed, but I'm happy with submitting the brief just based on...
Her time is limited, my man.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to proceed without transcripts.
Okay, good. So, look, I'll give you what you need, but I want her to have the opportunity to make her argument.
Understood, Your Honor.
On the
Of course.
papers. So, by the 21st, simultaneous submissions, I'll give you an, now, do I need to hear from you again, or can we just do it on the papers?
I'm happy to do it on the papers.
Okay.
Agreed.
And then I'll just give my opinion, and then I'm going to reschedule this. So I'll give you an opportunity to respond on the 28th. The court is away, so this is why I'm giving you a little bit of a farther date where everybody's going to come back.
So the briefing will be due on the 21st, and we'll come back on the 28th.
No, because I won't have my opinion by then.
Oh.
I want you to have my opinion by the time you come back.
Okay.
So I'm going to schedule this for you to come back August the 11th, and hopefully you would have already had my opinion by then.
Okay.
Understood, Your Honor.
And then if you need more time because you want the transcript, you'll have to let me know.
Yes, Judge.
Okay, I just don't want to... And one question I do want everybody to answer for me. And I know this is, because I think the question then turns on, you know, what is the exigency that made them go into the home and not need a warrant to go in, right? I think we have to answer
Yes.
that question.
That's right.
Okay? Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I just have one very brief request for the record. For Lieutenant Gigante, there was 2 videos played. If I could just have copies of those along with the other of the defense's exhibits, please.
I'm happy to provide the exhibits. The videos were only submitted
For identification, not evidence?
It wasn't submitted into evidence.
They weren't admitted into evidence. Okay? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good day, Judge.
All right, everyone, we can go off the record. Thank you, everyone. You said you wanted 24th? Oh, for the new court date? No, the new court date is
August 11th.
August 11th. This is yeah. Off the record, Thank you.